Love you, miss you so much. Have fun with your daddy.
How to make it better.
Don't put that on the camera.
Does he live alone?
He lives with his 16-year-old daughter who is not answering the phone.
This case has more twists than, I don't know, a very twisty thing. Here we go. By the way, this is Dark Case, and you can call me Jack. First off, I just want to say thank you for all the support you gave me trying these new kind of intros, where I let you a little bit into my world, while still maintaining a distance that I kind of feel comfortable with. I hope everyone's doing good today. I hope you're getting out if you can. I hope you're treating yourself well. And I hope everyone in the Dark Case family is just having a good day, having a good time, having a good life. If you want to join the Dark Case family, by the way, all you got to do is just hit subscribe. It's literally that simple and you're in. So just check quickly if you are subscribed, and if you're not, hit the button, you're in the family. Just double check that all your notifications are turned on as well. Not that it actually seems to do anything anymore, but they're just the times that we are living in. Today's silly little question. Well, first of all, I want to tell you what was in my cup last week, my Keep Cup trademark, not my trademark. In that Keep Cup was a coffee that I made at home, trying to save money. I'm broke over here. A coffee that I made at home. It had 1.5 sugars and it had oat milk. It's kind of like a homemade latte, but it costs about 20p to make rather than £5. So a lot of you guys said coffee. A lot of you guys thought I was healthy and drinking water, which I do try and drink water, but not all the time. Which brings me to today's silly little question. What's in my bottle? My chili bottle, by the way. Once again, would love to be sponsored, but they don't want to know me. Anyone? Hit me up. Today's case is actually pretty wild. I'm not sure how this one wasn't on my radar until I started doing some research, looking for cases, but yeah, it's a crazy one. There's a lot of big twists, a lot of big turns, and it's generally just horrifying, so let's get on with the video. Before we can even begin to understand this one, it's important to try and establish who Daniel Wendell Halseth actually was. Daniel was born on January the 28th, 1976, in Estacada, Oregon, USA. He grew up in the area and then later graduated from Hood River Valley High School before continuing his education at Western Oregon State University, and there he earned a Bachelor of Music. He would later complete a master's degree in business at Corban University. Music, though, remained a big part of his life. He played both drums and piano, and according to those who knew him, if there was an instrument in a room, he would gravitate towards it. All of this led to the nickname Drummer Dan. As well as his creative side, Daniel worked professionally in IT, and he was described as a consultant and a facilitator. He worked on various projects that required him to move between locations. And so, at different points in his life, he lived outside Nevada. This included time spent in Texas, before eventually returning to Las Vegas. Daniel also loved spending time outdoors. He walked frequently, often taking photographs and recording videos. He actually has quite an extensive social media presence, including YouTube. There's a recurring detail in multiple accounts about Daniel. People say that he would pause regularly. He would take in his surroundings. He would document what he saw, and he would just appreciate the moment. He lived by a phrase that appears repeatedly in descriptions of him, and that is, always stop and smell the roses. That phrase provides some insight into how he approached his daily life, at least from what people have said about him. He was also described as someone who supported others, including volunteering his time to help returning veterans. But above all of this, Daniel was a father. He had children, and they were central to his life. Everything about this version of Daniel's life, from the people that he loved, they do not even begin to explain what was later discovered inside his house. I just want to put a super quick pause on this documentary to say one thing. At the start of April, I said that I wanted to hit 250 channel members. It seemed like a lofty goal. It was kind of doubling the number of members that I had at the start of the month. And thank you all so much. It's incredible. I just hit 252 channel members. And seriously, just thank you so much. So what I want to do now is to set my next target, which is 300 channel members. And I'm going to set that target for the end of May. I know we're not in May yet, but I feel like it's a big number, so I want to give myself a bit more time so I'm not disappointed. But yeah, thank you so much to all channel members. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. If you're not a channel member and you're here, then being a part of the Dark Case family just means the world to me anyway. Like, thank you so much. Thank you. But I've talked enough. Let's get on with the video. Thank you. Bye. The music, the walks, the charity work, that was all only part of a much more complicated situation. He had been previously married to Elizabeth Halseth, and during that time, Elizabeth built a public profile in Nevada, eventually serving as a state senator. From the outside, they appeared to be functioning as a proper family, raising children whilst managing both private life and public responsibilities. But that image didn't last. In 2011, a serious incident took place inside the household. Daniel was arrested following allegations made by Elizabeth. Those allegations stated that he had physically assaulted her and that he had also made threats of an intimate nature. And I know that intimate isn't the right word when something's non-consensual, but I'm just having to play by the rules here. According to reports at the time, the claims included that he had struck her and that he had made statements suggesting that he would disgustingly violate her. These details entered the public record as part of his arrest. However, it's very important to state that this case did not proceed to a conviction. The charges were later dismissed. So there was no final legal ruling to establish if the allegations were proven or not. So the allegations exist. It seems that they must have been serious enough to lead to Daniel's arrest, but they were not tested through a full trial, and no conviction followed. So that leaves this whole incident pretty unresolved. It does remain part of the documented history of their relationship, but there's no definitive legal conclusion. What is clear though is that the relationship did not recover from its problems. Daniel and Elizabeth divorced, having 3 children. Following their separation, custody arrangements were put in place for their children, and for a period of time those arrangements seemed to just work. But the earlier incident did not simply disappear for the family, even though it kind of did legally. It always remained in the background of the family dynamic. And over time, those underlying tensions began to resurface, because nearly a whole decade later, the structure that had been in place started to move once again. And in 2020, one of their daughters, named Sierra, she started spending more time with Daniel once again. And in doing so, this would bring past issues back into focus. When Sierra started spending time with Father Daniel once again, this wasn't an informal arrangement. It really couldn't be that simple anymore. Instead, it had to be legally defined. During one of Sierra's visits to Father Daniel, she just stayed with him rather than returning home to her mother, Elizabeth. This decision led to immediate legal action. A court order was then issued requiring Sierra to return. This is another important moment in the timeline too, because the situation had moved beyond just a family disagreement and back into formal legal territory. Sierra did not just return voluntarily, at least not in first. Instead, communication continued between family members and legal representatives. During this time, emails were exchanged, and they outlined where everyone stood on both sides. There were now disagreements over where Sierra should live. There were also concerns raised over her well-being. And then, of course, there were competing narratives about what was actually in her best interest. Eventually, though, Sierra was required to comply with the court order. She returned to her mother, but the situation didn't just settle down. Instead, it began to escalate once again. Sierra later provided statements that outlined her perspective on both living arrangements and family dynamics. These statements included claims about her experiences and her reasons for wanting to remain with her father, and we'll talk some more about this later on. At the same time, other family members, including Sierra's siblings, provided their own accounts. But these did not always align. It's difficult to paint one clear picture here because there is no single unified version of events. Instead, there are multiple people, and all of them are presenting their own interpretation of the same situation. And in complex family situations like this, everyone has their own truth, although I don't really like that phrase. I think it actually works here, so I'll just put it that way. What is consistent though, from everyone's point of view, is that the family dynamic had clearly become unstable, because now once again there were legal interventions, there were those written statements, and there were ongoing disputes about control, safety and responsibility. The reason why I've really tried to drill into this is because I'm trying to set the scene here. And as always, these things don't happen in a vacuum, so it's important to hear and try and understand. To add a whole other layer to this thing, during the same time that we've been discussing, daughter Sierra, now aged 16, was in a relationship. The boyfriend was an 18-year-old named Aaron Guerrero. The relationship developed and had been going on for a few months, and it seems like it was serious. And from the available information, it was not viewed as a minor or casual connection. It was serious enough that it began to influence a lot of different things for Sierra. At some point, plans were discussed between Sierra and Aaron about leaving. And this wasn't framed as a short trip or a vacation. They were talking about moving away for good. As we know, Sierra's home life was pretty bad. There was a lot going on there, and to me this sounds like an attempt to just remove herself entirely from that environment. Father Daniel became aware of the relationship, and he also became aware of the plans to run away. So, as a parent really should do, Daniel intervened and he restricted contact between Sierra and Aaron. He was serious about this too. He limited their communications, and the relationship was now no longer permitted to continue as freely as it had been. So now, on top of everything else within this family, there was yet another conflict here. On one side, a parent attempting to control the situation, and on the other side, a teenager attempting to maintain a relationship and independence, constantly trying to pull away. But no matter what Daniel tried to enforce, the relationship did not end, and the runaway plans did not just disappear. Instead, they carried on, but they were perhaps forced to now continue in a more covert way. More private, more deliberate. By the time April the 9th, 2021 arrives, something inside Daniel Halseth's home had already gone very wrong. The only thing is, nobody outside of the property was aware of it yet. However, concerns and suspicions were growing. Daniel's mother became uneasy after communications with him didn't match his usual behaviour, and at some point that concern became big enough to where emergency services were now contacted. Here is some of her phone call to 911.
How may I help you?
Yeah, hi, I need a welfare check. I don't know if
On who are we doing a welfare check?
for my son. He's been missing for 2 days. His work's called, his family's called, I've called, his ex-wife's called, and there's nobody answering the phone, and there's nothing. Nobody can get a hold of him, and then his work called, and they can't get a hold of him, and it's really, he just doesn't act like this.
Okay. Does he live alone?
He lives with his 16-year-old daughter, who is not answering the phone.
Okay.
Or replying to a text.
Mm-hmm.
And the weird part is, I'll just tell you this, there's been ATM withdrawals at 3 different ATMs.
When responders arrived at the property, they were simply responding to a welfare concern, and there were no expectations as to what they were about to find. As firefighters moved through the house, their attention was drawn to the garbage where a fire was active. It wasn't a huge uncontrollable blaze, but it was significant enough to require immediate action. Following standard procedure, their priority was to extinguish the fire before assessing anything else. Once the fire was brought under control, the situation changes instantly. Behind the area where the fire had been burning, they located a body. It was Daniel Halseth. This is no longer a welfare check. It is now a crime scene. As investigators began examining the house, a clearer picture starts to emerge. There is red DNA present in multiple areas. It wasn't just confined to a single room or location. The placements of these red stains and spatters They suggest that some movement took place within the house after the initial incident occurred, i.e., Daniel was moved. There were also signs that certain areas had been interfered with, cleaning products were present, and some of the surfaces appeared to have been wiped down, but it will later turn out not well enough. This kind of partial cleaning can be worse than just doing nothing at all. There may be a trail left behind of where the products used actually came from. And as this scene is processed further, the sequence of what probably happened starts to take shape. At the same time, the injuries identified on Daniel, they cannot be explained by a fire. Attempts had been made to dismantle him. After the events inside the house, the timeline really starts moving quickly and it's kind of all over the place. Some new communications begin, with messages being sent to Daniel's mother. These messages, though, they present a version of events that do not align with what investigators already knew. These messages were presenting him as still being alive, saying that he was just resting, saying that there was nothing immediately wrong. So somebody was trying to control the narrative outside of the house. And to make this case even more concerning, with a terrible scene and Daniel obviously no longer with us, Sierra was also missing. At the same time, Daniel's car had been taken, financial transactions on his accounts were happening, money was being withdrawn, and in doing so a trackable path was left behind. This new trail starts in Las Vegas, but it continues out of state. Eventually the route leads to Salt Lake City in Utah. Whether the suspects thought they were remaining invisible, or whether they didn't know or care, those debit cards continued to be used. Locations were being given away online. CCTV captures the suspects clearly. And so, investigators closed in. In the days leading up to April 9th, 2021, a whole bunch of stuff starts happening that takes this case on a new trajectory. Daniel Halseth and Aaron Guerrero are documented visiting multiple stores in the Las Vegas area. At these locations, they purchased some things that one by one don't sound so bad. But together well, what do you think about them? They bought things like bleach. They obtained gloves and face coverings. Separately, they bought liquid capable of accelerating fires. Now, what would you do with things like that? What also stands out is how these purchases were actually made. They were spread across multiple trips, different stores, different times. But CCTV footage places them at these specific locations. The transactions, of course, are digitally recorded, confirming their timings and whereabouts. And at different stages, responsibilities appear to be divided between the couple. One person completes certain transactions, the other goes and buys other stuff. This introduces coordination, it introduces planning, and it suggests an understanding that they both knew what was coming next. When I spoke earlier about the family life, it gets even more complicated, even darker than it originally sounded. Because long before April of 2021, there had already been years of conflict, allegations, court involvement, and competing accounts about what life inside the family had actually been like. There is, of course, the 2011 confrontation between Daniel and Elizabeth, in which Daniel later gives his own statement to police. In that statement, he admitted that he had planned the confrontation in advance because he suspected that Elizabeth had been having an affair and he simply wanted to scare her. He admitted to calling her into a room, pushing her backwards, repeatedly making aggressively intimate remarks, and pulling her pants down more than once. He did, however, deny touching her in an SA kind of way, and he claimed that he had stopped and said that he was joking. This is just one pressure cooker in that home. But there were more. Another possible reason sits inside the collapse of the marriage itself. The affidavit from Pastor Terry Jimmerson adds another layer to the breakdown. According to that affidavit, Daniel said that he had wanted another woman, someone called Kaylee, to move into the family home. He also later confessed that he wanted to leave Elizabeth and their children, and then to move to Oregon with Kaylee. If that is indeed true, things seem to be getting worse and worse. Even a short text exchange from 2011 hints at Daniel himself acknowledging that he had caused the damage. So when you step back, this was really not a clean separation. It appears to have been a long-running nightmare. And then, years later, that fracture was reopened. It was widened through Sierra. A 2020 email shows Daniel pushing to spend time with Sierra separately, whilst Elizabeth was pushing back, insisting that the existing custody arrangement should be followed. By August of 2020, a court order stated that Elizabeth had primary physical custody and that Daniel was violating the order by refusing to return Sierra. So Sierra had become the centre of a renewed legal struggle. This was no longer just a story about two ex-spouses who disliked each other. It had become a story about where Sierra lived, who had influence over her, and who she was meant to believe. But there are even more layers to this, because once Sierra's own letter is added in, the picture becomes even darker. In that handwritten letter to the court, Sierra describes Daniel as a source of trauma, and she makes a long list of allegations. She claims that he was controlling and isolating. She claims physical maltreatment. She claims SA and other inappropriate behaviour. These included touching, lewd comments, coercion, exposure to adult material, and taking photographs or videos against her will. She claims that he normalised underage drinking, that he psychologically manipulated her, that he verbally attacked her, brought unsafe people into the home, and created an unstable environment. She even claims that he allowed or encouraged other individuals to behave sexually towards her. If Sierra believed or experienced these things, then that gives one possible explanation for how she may have come to see Daniel not as a parent protecting her, but as someone standing in the way of a better life, of freedom, or her control over her own life as she was starting to enter adulthood. But this is where the case becomes even more complex once again, because there are also statements from Sierra's siblings. Sierra's sister Dana, she made a police statement that says Daniel offered her alcohol, and that she later believed that Sierra drank with him as well. Sierra's brother Jordan's statement says that he was pressured to drink alcohol, and he suspected that the same may have happened to his sisters. Those statements support at least one of Sierra's broader claims, specifically the normalization of alcohol around the children. It is important to say that none of these statements can actually be treated as fact. They are all alleged or opinions made by the people involved in this case. At the same time, there's another possible reason as to why things went south, and that is Aaron Guerrero. By 2020 and into 2021, Sierra's relationship with Aaron was now full-blown. Both sets of parents had reportedly agreed that the two of them should stop seeing each other, and so those plans to run away had been discussed. To them, Daniel could have simply been an obstacle. The chase for the suspects came to an end when, in Utah, Daniel's vehicle was identified. Law enforcement conduct a stop. The individuals inside are detained, and they are, of course, Sierra and Aaron. And from that point, the investigation really accelerates. Regardless of all the other evidence in this case, one video was uncovered, and it's truly unbelievable. I think the best thing I can do is just show you the video in its entirety.
I don't know what to say.
Welcome back to our YouTube channel. After Day 3 after murdering somebody.
Whoa! Don't put that on the camera.
It was worth it.
And we had a lot today.
It was worth it. I got plenty of sex. I was payment for doing it.
And no this time. We got through that. We overcame.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All of the evidence from multiple sources is brought together, and ultimately both of them enter guilty pleas. This removes a need for a full trial process. The admissions establish responsibility within the framework of the law. Sentencing follows. Both receive life sentences. They have the possibility of parole after 22 years.
The judge sentencing the teens to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 22 years served. Those were terms specified in an agreement when the teens pleaded guilty to murder and other charges.
Where did the evil come that was bred into a soul that murders their own father?
Christine Halseth delivering an emotional statement about the murder of her son, Daniel.
You're in a tough spot because
your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
She's not my granddaughter.
Sierra Halseth claiming her father abused her.
He locks me in place and starts pushing me and hitting me around.
Aaron Guerrero offering an apology.
I ask for forgiveness as I get sentenced today, and I hope it brings you a little peace.
The Halseth family insisting Sierra's claims of abuse are false. Some saying they believe the death penalty would be a more appropriate sentence.
But they both should have gotten death for the life they took. 20 years will never be enough for taking Daniel.
Daniel Halseth's loved ones pointing out how Aaron Guerrero appeared to show remorse and emotion, while they believe Sierra did not.
Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.